If you're just starting out with learning Norwegian, I have some really good news for you because, as I'll show you in this video, Norwegian verbs are super easy to learn. So this is essentially just an introduction to Norwegian regular verbs. So I will teach you now how to create the present tense, the simple past, and the perfect tenses. So starting off with the present tense. The present tense is formed by taking the infinitive and adding an R. That's it. So if we have an infinitive such as å gå, and notice, by the way, infinitive verbs always need to have this infinitive marker, å. That's like to go in English, or to walk, actually. Usually it's to walk. That becomes går. Gå plus r becomes går. Jeg går hjem. I'm walking home, or I walk home. We don't have this I'm walking. That really doesn't exist as a separate verb form in Norwegian as it does in English. So we just use the present tense. That communicates the same thing. Gå plus r, går. Se, to see or watch, ser. Jeg ser på TV. Jeg ser på TV. Spille, spiller. So notice how some verbs, actually most verbs, end with e in the infinitive. And again, we just put on the r. Jeg spiller gitar. Jeg jobber i en bank. I work in a bank. I'm playing the guitar. And that's it. But I actually have more good news for you here, which is that we do not need to conjugate verbs in Norwegian based on the person. So we have jeg går, I walk. Du går, you walk. Han, hun, det går. He, she, it walks. Vi går, dere går, de går. Same form. So this applies for all verbs in all tenses all the time. There's not a single exception to this in the entire language. We always have the same form of the verb for each person. Okay, so you only need to really focus on the pronouns. Jeg, du, for you, han or hun, she, he, she, or it as det. Notice how we say det, not det. We do not pronounce the T here. Det. Vi for we, dere for you or y'all, and de. Notice how we do not pronounce this as det, because if you say det, it sounds like you're saying it, det, this thing. Whereas here we should pronounce this as de, okay? That's how we create this, the present tense. Now let's take a look at preteritum. That's simple past. And in order to create the simple past, we have to distinguish between 4 categories of verbs. So I'll now show you these 4 categories and how to apply these different suffixes and which ones to put on which types of verbs. So we have verbs ending with te, we have verbs ending with et or a, optional. We have verbs ending with de or also de with a single d. So before I show you those 4 categories, we have to talk quickly about what a verb stem is. So because we need to always work with a verb stem. So if you have an infinitive, you just remove the e, and then you get to the verb stem. So å spise, to eat, becomes spis. So this is what we're working with, this word without the e. That's where we put on, for example, one of these suffixes, and I'll show you which one. Kaste, remove the e. Lage, remove the e. So sometimes the verb does not end with this unstressed e at the end, in which case we do not need to do anything with the stem. We already have the stem in that case. Okay, so the first category is when the verb stem ends with only one consonant. So for example, å lese. Look at the stem here. We remove the e to get to the stem. It ends with one s, one consonant. So it's the first category. We call this a te verb because we say leste. So jeg leste en bok, I read a book in the past tense. Jeg spiste mat, from spise, one s, jeg spiste mat. Jeg reparerte bilen. Can you see what the verb in the infinitive form must have been here? So we remove the suffix, and then there's an e instead for the infinitive, right? So å reparere. So you see how this ends with one consonant. That places it in the first category where we need to put on te. The second category is when the verb stem is ending with more than one consonant. For example, kaste. Here we have st, that's two consonants. And as a suffix, we put on et or a, which makes it kastet or even kasta. So this is optional. Kasta is a bit more informal, more common in spoken language, whereas kastet is more formal, written. Okay? Jeg kasta ballen. Jeg kastet ballen. I threw the ball. Jobbe, the same thing, to work. Jeg jobbet i en bank. Jobba i en bank. I worked in a bank. Jeg vasket gulvet. I cleaned the floor. That is number 2. The third category is when a verb ends with a stressed vowel, such as å bo. So here, for example, we don't say lese, å boe. We don't have this at the end. So there's no unstressed vowel. There's a stressed vowel instead, bo. And when there's a stressed vowel, we need to put on the double D, such as this, plus I. So bodde. Bodde. Jeg bodde i USA i 2012. Vi snudde, we turned around. Vi snudde etter 5 kilometer. Jeg sydde på knappen. I sewed on the button. Or is it better to say sewed the button on? I was actually not totally sure about that. Let me know in the comments below. And the fourth category will be when the verb stem ends with 3 different types of letters. It's either V or G or a diphthong. So for example, here we have a diphthong. Eie is a diphthong. So diphthongs would be, for example, ei, øy, au. So those are combinations of vowel sounds. Those are diphthongs, where we have combinations of vowel sounds comprising one syllable, only one syllable. So ei is one syllable, ei. So this is a diphthong, and it becomes eide, owned. Jeg eide huset. I owned the house. Henrik Ibsen, a very famous author, levde på 1800-tallet. Levde. So here, what you see is the letter V. So if it ends with the letter V, usually it gets the d suffix. And the same with the letter G. So vi lagde ofte pizza. We often made dinner. Pizza. Pizza is dinner, I guess. Lagde. So diphthong, letter V, letter G. And that's it. That's how you create the simple past of these regular verbs. And now that I've showed you how to form the simple past, we also need to look at how to form the present perfect or the past perfect. So this perfect tense is very easy because we apply the same categories again. So I've here copied the slide from the simple past, changed it to perfectum, perfect. And all we need to do is just remove a letter here. We remove this E, and this E, and number 2 stays the same. So how does that look? Well, for the first category, we just say lest instead of leste. And the second category, we say, for example, kastet, and that's the same. For the third category, we say har bodd instead of bodde. And the fourth category, har eid instead of eide. Okay, so very simple. Jeg har lest en bok. Jeg har spist mat. Jeg har reparert bilen. Just the T. As I said, this is the same. Jeg har kastet ballen. Jeg har jobbet i en bank. Jeg har vasket gulvet. Number 3. Jeg har bodd i USA. Here we need to remove the time because the time is ended. So I cannot say jeg har bodd i 2012. I cannot say I have lived in 2012 because that period of time is over. Vi har snudd. We've turned around. Jeg har sydd på knappen. And the last one. Jeg har eid huset. Henrik Ibsen har levd. Vi har lagd pizza. Most people actually say laget, but we can also use lagd. And lastly, if we want to create the past perfect, which works the same way as the past perfect in English, we just change har to hadde. Jeg hadde lest en bok. Jeg hadde kastet ballen. Jeg hadde bodd i USA. And jeg hadde eid huset. Okay, so we just change har to hadde. And the participle, which this word is called, stays the same. Lastly, what I'll have to say here is that the system I've shown you here perhaps is not 100% consistent, maybe 90%. There are certainly exceptions, mostly with double consonant verbs and other verbs which perhaps should look like they are in the second category, but they turn out to be in the first category, let's say. So they are, you think they may be et verbs, but they are te verbs, for example. So we have tenke, which becomes tenkte. So isn't that strange that we have two consonants here, but we still apply the te suffix? I guess it's a little bit strange, especially when we also have a banke, which becomes banket. So this is in the second category, and this is in the first category. So that's a little bit strange, I guess. But applying the system will make you conjugate the verbs correctly in most cases, okay? Of course, there are also irregular verbs, but that's another topic, so we're not going to cover those here. But of course, irregular verbs you will have to learn one by one. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments down below. I mostly do content in Norwegian for intermediate to advanced students, but I do my best to sprinkle in some beginners content here and there as well. So please subscribe to my channel if you're interested in watching more, and like the video if you found it useful. Så det var alt for i dag. Vi snakkes.